Conflicts took place in North Africa during World War I, between the Entente and the Central Powers. The Senussi of Libya sided with the Ottoman Empire against the British Empire and the Kingdom of Italy. On 14 November 1914, the Ottoman Sultan proclaimed jihad and sought to create a diversion to draw British troops from the Sinai and Palestine campaign. The Italian state wished to preserve the gains made in the Italo-Turkish War. The Senussi campaign took place in North Africa, from 23 November 1915 to February 1917. In the summer of 1915, the Ottoman Empire persuaded the Grand Senussi Ahmed Sharif to attack British-occupied Egypt from the west, raise jihad and encourage an insurrection in support of an Ottoman offensive against the Suez Canal from the east. The Senussi crossed the Libyan-Egyptian border at the coast in November 1915. British Empire forces withdrew at first and then defeated the Senussi in several engagements, including the action of Vigaja. The British recaptured the territory along the coast by March 1916, with the western frontier force of the Egyptian Expeditionary Force, which included the 1st South African Infantry Brigade. Further west, the inhabitants of areas recently conquered or seized by European powers from the Ottoman Empire exploited the unsettled conditions caused by the war in Europe to regain control of their lands. Uprisings took place in Morocco and Niger against the French colonialists, some of which lasted longer than the First World War. In Sudan, hostilities took place between the Anglo-Egyptians and the Sultan of Darfur, who was believed to have prepared an invasion of Egypt, to be synchronized with Senussi operations on the western frontier. Operations by the British were conducted by small numbers of men equipped with motor vehicles, aircraft and wireless, which multiplied their effectiveness and enabled them frequently to surprise their opponents by the speed of their maneuvers. Background: German and Ottoman strategy. In 1914, the Central Powers began a peripheral strategy, which had antecedents in the concept of Weltpolitik, the thinking of the German Navy in the 1900s, during the Anglo-German naval antagonism and in the writings of advocates of overseas empire. The possibility of encouraging revolutionary warfare among the enslaved peoples of the British, French and Russian empires. The founding of a great German empire was not contemplated, but military weakness in Europe led to an attempt to turn colonial inferiority into a strength. On 20 August 1914, Moltke wrote to the Foreign Office, demanding Islamic revolutions in Morocco, Tunisia and Algeria. The means to bring about change in the non-European world were limited, with little expertise, few men and little equipment to spare from Europe, and exiguous overland routes to the outside world. Moltke expected diplomats to create anti-imperialist armies, as the Foreign Office pursued a pan-Islamic strategy, using the Ottoman Empire and its army as the means. The Ottomans entered the war to escape from European domination, rather than as a German proxy, and had imperial ambitions in North Africa, Central Asia and the Near East. In October 1914, Enver devised a war plan which included a holy war and an invasion of Egypt. On 14 November, Sheikh al-Islam declared holy war, called on all Muslims to fight the Entente and Allied powers but not Italy, and excluded Muslims under the rule of Germany or Austria-Hungary. The Sheikh urged the peoples of the European colonial empires to join in, a message which reached North, East and West Africa. On 5 August, Enver established the Teşkilat-i Mahsusa to conduct propaganda, subversion, terrorism and sabotage, based on the precedent of the war in Libya against the Italians. Anglo-French strategy. European imperialist and colonialist powers had apprehensions about jihad before 1914. Clemenceau had predicted it in 1912, if war broke out between the great powers. In August 1914, Charles Letard, the governor of Algeria, expected a rebellion and on 5 November, tried to forestall the Ottoman call to arms, by presenting the Ottomans as German puppets. The French were assisted by Royal Navy code breaking, to anticipate landings from German U-boats and negate the intriguing of the Central Powers. French prestige after the Moroccan crises reduced the likelihood of attempts to overthrow the colonial regime, and German prisoners of war were used as forced labor in Morocco and Algeria to display French military prowess. Most of the French regular troops were sent to France in 1914 and replaced by territorial troops in Morocco but on the frontier of Algeria and Libya. Senussi operations against the Italian army led the French to allow the garrisons of Ghadames and Gat to retreat into Algeria and then be rearmed to recapture Ghadames in January 1915. As part of the French policy of drawing Italy into the war, North Africa in 1914 before 1906, when the Senussi became involved in resistance against the French. They had been a relatively peaceful religious sect of the Sahara Desert, opposed to fanaticism. When the Italians invaded Libya in 1911, occupying the coast, the Senussi resisted the Italians from the interior of the country. During their resistance against the Italians, the Senussi maintained generally friendly relations with the British in Egypt. The region had been annexed by Italy in 1911 after the Italo-Turkish War and by France in 1912, and control had not been consolidated by the Italians when the war began in Europe. After the loss of the province of Trablusgarp to Italy in the War of 1911–1912, the local Senussi people continued with their resistance against the Italians. Fighting was conducted by Senussi militia under the leadership of Ahmad al-Sharif, whose followers in Fezzan and southern Tripolitania prevented Italian consolidation their hold on these regions. The Ottoman government never ceased to provide assistance to the local tribesmen in the region. Military operations. Morocco's Aeon War, 1914–1921. Attempts were made by Germany and the Ottomans to influence conditions in the French colonies, by intriguing with potentates who had been ousted by the French. Spanish authorities in the region informally tolerated the distribution of propaganda and money, but a German plot to smuggle 5,000 rifles and 500,000 bullets through Spain was thwarted. The Tescalate Mazusa maintained several agents in North Africa but had only 2 in Morocco. The Zayon War was fought between France and the Zayon Confederation of Berber tribes in French Morocco between 1914 and 1921. Morocco had become a French protectorate in 1912, and the French army extended French influence eastwards through the Middle Atlas Mountains towards French Algeria. The Zayans, led by Mufhar al-Hamor-Zayani, quickly lost the towns of Tazza and Kenifra but managed to inflict many casualties on the French, who responded by establishing groups mobiles, combined arms formations of regular and irregular infantry, cavalry and artillery. By 1914 the French had 80,000 troops in Morocco, but 2/3 were withdrawn from 1,915 for service in France, and more than 600 French soldiers were killed at the Battle of El Herrera on 13 November 1914. Hubert Lyautey, the French governor, reorganized his forces and pursued a forward policy rather than passive defense. The French regained most of the lost territory, despite intelligence and financial support from the Central Powers to the Zayon Confederation, and raids which caused losses to the French when already short of manpower. Niger KSN revolt. The Senussi leadership in the Fezzan town of Kufra Oasis declared jihad against the French colonialists in October 1914. The Sultan of Agades convinced the French that the Tuareg remained loyal, but the followers of the KSN besieged the garrison on 17 December 1916. KSN, his brother Mokhtar Kodogo and c. 1,000 Tuareg raiders, armed with rifles and a field gun, defeated several French relief columns. The Tuareg seized the main towns of the air, including Ingle, Asode and Oudaris. On 3 March 1917, a large French force from Zinda relieved the Agade's garrison and began to recapture the towns. Mass reprisals were taken against the town populations, especially against marabouts. Though many were neither Tuareg or rebels, and the French summarily murdered 130 people in public in Agades and Ingle. KSN fled north and was killed in 1919 by local forces in Mourzouk. Mokhtar Kodogo was killed by the French in 1920, after leading a revolt by the Tubu and Fulla in the Sultanate of Damagaram. Egypt-Libya Senussi campaign. Britain declared war on the Ottoman Empire on 5 November 1914, and in the summer of 1915, Turkish envoys, including Nuri Bey, brother of Enver Pasha, and Jafar Pasha, a Baghdadi Arab serving in the Turkish army, negotiated an agreement with the Grand Senussi, Sayyid Ahmed Ash-Sharif, to attack the British in Egypt from the west, during the Ottoman offensive through Palestine against the Suez Canal. By late 1915, many of the British forces in Egypt had been sent to Gallipoli and Mesopotamia. Western Egypt was garrisoned by the Egyptian Coast Guard. The Ottomans and Germans delivered modern weaponry by submarine to the Senussi. German and Turkish officers were also transported by submarine and landed on 19 May 1915 to the west of Sollum and set up headquarters at Siwa. The Senussi raised 5,000 infantry and other irregular troops, equipped with Turkish artillery and machine guns, for campaigns along the coast, to attack Sollum, Masor Matruh and Daaba on the way to Alexandria, and from Siwa through the band of oases of Bahariya, Farafre, Dakhla and Karga 100 miles west of the Nile. The Senussi crossed the Egyptian-Libyan border on 21 November 1915 to begin the coastal campaign. At the border, 300 to 400 men attacked a frontier post and were repulsed. In February 1916, Syed Ahmed accompanied the Senussi against the band of oases. Several oases were captured and then lost in October 1916 to British forces. The Senussi retired from Egypt in February 1917. In November, Senussi forces occupied Jaffa coast. On 6 November, the German submarine U-35 torpedoed and sank a steamer HMS Tara in the Bay of Sollum. U-35 surfaced, sank the Coast Guard gunboat Abbas and badly damaged Nur el-Bahr with its deck gun. On 14 November, the Senussi attacked an Egyptian position at Sollum, and on the night of 17 November a party of Senussi fired into Sollum, as another party cut the coast telegraph line. Next night, a monastery at Sidi Barani, 48 miles beyond Sollum, was occupied by 300 Mahafizia, and on the night of 19 November, a coast guard was killed. An Egyptian post was attacked 30 miles east of Sollum on 20 November. The British withdrew from Sollum to Masor Matruh, 120 miles further east, which had better facilities for a base, and the Western Frontier Force was created. On the 11th of December, a British column sent to Duwar Hussein was attacked along the Matruh-Sollum track, and in the affair of Wadi Senbar, drove the Senussi out of the wadi. The reconnaissance continued, and on 13 December at Wadi Hashiviyat the British were attacked again and held up, until artillery came into action in the afternoon and forced the Senussi to retreat. The British returned to Matruh until 25 December and then made a night advance to surprise the Senussi. At the affair of Wadi Majid, the Senussi were defeated but were able to withdraw to the west. Air reconnaissance found more Senussi encampments in the vicinity of Matruh at Halazin, which was attacked on 23 January. In the affair of Halazin, the Senussi fell back skillfully and then attempted to envelop the British flanks. The British were pushed back on the flanks as the centre advanced and defeated the main body of Senussi, who were again able to withdraw. In February 1916, the Western Frontier Force was reinforced and a British column was sent west along the coast to recapture Sollum. Air reconnaissance discovered a Senussi encampment at Agaja, which was attacked in the action of Agaja on 26 February. The Senussi were defeated and then intercepted by the Dorset Yeomanry, who charged across open ground, swept by machine gun and rifle fire as the Senussi withdrew. The British lost half their horses and 58 of 184 men, but prevented the Senussi from slipping away. Jafar Pasha, the commander of the Senussi forces on the coast, was captured and Sollum was reoccupied by British forces on 14 March 1916, which concluded the coastal campaign. Band of Oases. On the 11th of February 1916, the Senussi and Saeed Ahmed Ash-Sharif occupied the oasis at Bahariya, which was then bombed by British aircraft. The oasis at Farafray was occupied at the same time, and then the Senussi moved on to the oasis at Dakhla on the 27th of February. The British responded by forming the southern force at Beni Suef. Egyptian officials at Karga were withdrawn and the oasis was occupied by the Senussi, until they withdrew without being attacked. The British reoccupied the oasis on 15 April and began to extend the light railway terminus at Karga to the Mofara oasis. The mainly Australian Imperial Camel Corps, patrolling on camels and in light Ford cars, cut off the Senussi from the Nile Valley. Preparations to attack the oasis at Bahariya were detected by the Senussi garrison, which withdrew to Siwa in early October. The southern force attacked the Senussi in the affairs in the Dakhla oasis of the Egyptian army, organized a force of c. 2,000 men at Rahad, a railhead 200 miles east of the Darfur frontier. On 16 March, the force crossed the frontier in lorries, from a forward base established at Nahud, 90 miles from the border, with the support of 4 aircraft. By May, the force was close to the Darfur capital of El Fasher. At the affair of Beringia on the 22nd of May, the Fur army was defeated and the Anglo-Egyptian force captured the capital the next day. Dinar and 2,000 followers had left and as they moved south were bombed from the air. French troops in Chad, who had returned from the Cameroon campaign, prevented a Darfurian withdrawal westwards. Dinar withdrew into the Mara Mountains 50 miles south of El Fasher and sent envoys to discuss terms, but the British believed he prevaricating and ended the talks on 1 August. Internal dissension reduced the force, with Dinar to c. 1,000 men and Anglo-Egyptian outposts were pushed out from El Fasher to the west and southwest after the August rains. A skirmish took place at Dibus on 13 October and Dinar opened negotiations but was again suspected of bad faith. Dinar fled southwest to Geba and a small force was sent in pursuit. At dawn on 6 November, the Anglo-Egyptians attacked in the affair of Geba and Dinar's remaining followers scattered and the body of the Sultan was found 1 mile from the camp. After the expedition, Darfur was incorporated into Sudan.